Thank you for the invitation. We're always glad to come and tell about what we are doing. Today I will talk mainly about two of our major kindergarten projects that I've been project managing. But actually I want to firstly take a step back and tell a little bit about the background of Cebra, because the background of Cebra is actually also the background of how buildings for childhood development and schools in Denmark have developed. These are the three guys that are the co-founders of Cebra, and the guy here in front is Kaas, who was actually project managing a very experimental school in Denmark. Can I see if I can make this guy? And Kaas took part in SCUP, which was a childhood development project in Gentofte, a municipality north of Copenhagen. And they, in the mid-90s, they had an idea that they wanted to redo all their schools. They had about 10 to 15 schools in the municipality that they wanted to change into new learning environments and the new ways of learning, which was then partly from the ideas of Howard Gardner, who you might know. This here was how schools looked before the projects in Gentofte, and what the projects in Gentofte ended up with was actually that they actually got sort of the main target of how schools in Denmark afterwards were actually going to be built. So they did a lot of experiments in Gentofte, and Carsten, as I said, was actually part of the first one, which was the most experimental one. They built a school without no interior walls, and they of course found out that that was maybe too experimental, so they took a step back. And the Cebra actually started out after this school, and we ended up by doing the sort of the main parts of the rest of the schools. So we did 6 schools in Gentofte from the ideas of Howard Gardner. And this was how the schools looked before that. It was how this is a good example of a modernistic school from the 60s. From one of the big modernists in Denmark, Arne Jacobsen. And it's actually quite a good example because they have daylights in the corridor, and they have these exhibition monsters in the corridor, but it's anyway a really boring layout of a school. And it's how the schools in Denmark actually look like for 100 years. That was how they looked like in the 30s and the 40s and also in the modernistic times, and it was also how they looked in the 80s when I went to school. So in the 90s they thought, okay, we actually need to do a change. And you all know these type of schools. You went into a classroom and you spent all day in the classroom together with the main teacher. You actually didn't see the other kids. If you went out on the corridor and down the corridor, there was a really big chance that you would get bullied, and you wouldn't go out there. And in a way, you're actually afraid of moving around the school because the bigger kids will mock you. You also only had one teacher, one primarily teacher throughout all the years that you went to school. So it was actually quite bad for you if you had a bad chemistry with this teacher, because you were just stuck with this guy for 10 years. And you could also have a bad chemistry with the other kids in your class, but also too bad, you were just stuck with this class for the 10 years that you went to school. So we wanted to change that, and from that we now went to this. This is how schools in Denmark look like today. This is one of our recent examples. So it's much more about openness. It's much more about seeing each other and getting inspired from each other. We experienced that I'll follow the track of Gisela, that children actually learn even more from looking and observing each other, and by talking about what they have learned in school, than they actually learn by sitting down in a classroom and listening to a teacher. We also went from having one specific classroom to actually now talk about home areas. where you actually combine and you actually connect children of different ages. So a kid from 2 years can actually be working together with a kid from who is 6 years. Now this is of course a junior school, but it's actually the same ideas that counts for our kindergartens. These are the main ideas of Howard Gardner, that we could actually learn in different ways, and we as persons are sort of different, and we learn in different speeds, and and we interact in different ways. I don't want to go deeply into them, but you know them. But what the Scope project in Gentofte was about how could we actually translate these ideas and the ways of learning into physical environments. And we tried at Cebra to actually convert this into a program where this was sort of an outcome. And you could actually see this as a main layout for a school or a kindergarten, that we converted the different intelligences into spaces. And these spaces, in the modernistic school, everything was differentiated, and it was separated. And you could actually not see what was going on in the different parts of the school. Now everything is open, and you can actually see the different parts of the school, and the way you teach is much more project related. So we talk now about having these squares. One could be a performance square, one could be a workshop square, and one could be a science square. And around the science square you have all the biological, the science, chemistry, and physics. Around the workshop you have crafts and drawings and visual arts. And around the performance square you have music, and you have gymnastics and so on. And here you have mainly the small kids, here the middle school, and here the high school. But of course the small kids can also use this square. And all these three main squares are connected through a main part of the building, which could be the circulation, where we often now put the library. So the idea is not that you have a fixed, have a fixed seating in a classroom, but you actually have project-related education. So a class, which we now call sort of a home base, could now actually work in different kinds of workshops at the same time. So for instance, if they're doing a theater, the same class or home base could actually work on constructing the scenography, while others are doing the performance. And in the end they put everything together. They can see each other while they're working, and they can switch around the different workshops while they're working. Another scenario could be that they are doing learning about biology, how digestion and eating food can be consumed and be burned and gym, and how they can prepare the food and how they can serve it in the cafe. And all are related to these main squares. So the whole idea of organizing the new school is that how can we actually get rid of the boring corridor? Can the boring corridor actually become a place of learning, which is so it's more interesting, and you actually learn something from going from A to B. And there are different steps. The first step is of course to sort of widen it and make these pockets where you can actually have place for learning. So it's not a corridor for walking. And the next step could be to sort of program the different pockets with different functions. We're also looking into how computer games are actually programmed. And it's very interesting because computer programs, it's a very dynamic process. And because when you do a computer program, you actually need a computer game. You always need to follow the game player really carefully, because if the game gets too difficult, the child will give up and don't want to spend time on it. But if it's too easy, the child will also sort of say, okay, this is too easy, I don't want to bother with it. So when you do computer games, you always need to offer a certain difficulty, but it should not be too difficult. And we are thinking of the spaces in the same way that you should actually always have spaces where the kid can interact, and you should be able to offer new possibilities when the kids experience it once again. And you should always offer somehow a guidance, but not to be too specific, because if it's a too specific space, then the child will also fast know, okay, this is this space, and I'll sort of don't want to bother and go there again or interact with it. So what we're trying to do is trying to do these spaces that react and interact. And we also have Alice in Wonderland in our slideshow. And we also think it's a really good reference because Alice falls into this pit, and she goes through all these worlds where she experiences a new thing, and she experiences these really crazy worlds, and she come out in the other end. She wakes up from her dream, and she has been through this process of actually learning, but without knowing it. So she actually learns, and she actually grows up through this process, but it's just a playful dream for her. These are some of the school and kindergartens that we have been doing. Actually, these, I don't want to really go deeply into detail with it, but these are the first schools we did for Gentofte Scope regime. This is the design kindergarten that I will talk to you about, and this is another kindergarten in southern Denmark. We did a lot of the schools are done by converting old structures. So you can see here, this is the old part of the school, and we just added small add-ons to actually offer this new ways of learning, and being able to reconstruct the old structure as well inside the buildings. These are the interior, some of the interiors, so it's more about the openness and sort of having sort of specific spaces that can offer different ways of learning. Just shortly, in this atrium space, you have small sort of pockets where you can actually sit and have small group-related works. And you can also have big gatherings at the atriums there. Some rooms are double height, some are triple height, and the same space offers different ways of learning. And it's the same way here. This is Bakkegård School, one of the Gentofte schools, that you have different sort of areas where you can actually go and you can sit and you can study either by yourself or in big groups, but you're always sort of aware of the other kids. You're always aware of that there's another life going on in the building. These are some of the playgrounds that we have done. We're also trying to not to sort of make a specific purpose of the playground, but we are trying to sort of show a direction, but it should be sort of fun for the kid, and no matter what age you are as a kid and you come to the playground, you should actually be able to sort of find a new experience and be challenged at the level that you are. So the first project that I want to talk about is the design kindergarten. You asked from a municipality south of Denmark to come up with an idea for a kindergarten with the focus on design and art. And this is, I must say, this is not normal in Denmark that you sort of have a specific focus on your kindergarten. But this municipality, they thought that they wanted to do 3 thematic kindergartens, one for creativity, one for music, and one for sports. And we did the one for creativity. This is how it looks. I will come back to why it looks like it does. This is from Google Maps, the entrance and the playground and the building. And the whole concept of the building is that we actually, the institutions in Denmark are rather big. This one is 1,200 square meters. And often when you do an institution or a kindergarten, it can actually become quite a big building, which doesn't meet the scale of the kids. So our idea is to say that, okay, it's still an institution, it's still kindergarten, but we want to meet the scale of the kids, so we want to break down the big volume into smaller departments, and then connect it with one big roof. And the idea of the facades and interior elevations is that we wanted to make it sort of a basic background for the kids. So that's why we have this white facade, both on the exterior and the interior, because it's the kids that is going to sort of colorize the building. For the program, we have an entrance which is turning towards west with the parking lot, and there's the administration, and we have a sort of staff and kitchen area, and then we have the different classrooms towards the garden, playground, and which is turning east and south, where you get the sun while the kids are in the kindergarten. The top one is for the nursery, and the two other ones are for the 2 to 6 year olds. And in between we have the common space. Yeah, just to talk about the floor plan, we have the nursery have 2 departments, and there is the sleeping area, which is a non-heated room. And in Denmark, normally in summertime and spring, the kids actually sleep and even outside. So these trolleys, they can bring outside and they sleep outside. Here's the home bases or the classrooms. Actually, I also don't. The English term for the space where the kids are is classroom, but I also don't like this term because the kids are actually playing at this age. They are not going to school. So the Danish word for it is actually living room, if I translate it directly, and I like that word even more. And then here it's not that if you have a kid and it's going here, it's not that it's connected to a specific living room. It's actually sort of floating around in the whole building. And each of these living rooms have a different purpose. So down here it's music and it's theater, and up here it's workshops for art and design. And here there is a sort of a wall which they can put aside, so they have one big cultural space here. And in between these two there is a non-heated winter garden where they can actually play. It's inside, so where they can play with water and sand and the dirt. Then there's the big common area where the kids are eating and doing whatever. And to the common area there's a kitchen connected where the kids can stand and do the cooking together with the kitchen staff. Then there are some technical spaces and storage spaces. And up here we have a living room with an oven where they can bake pizza and bread. And there are 2 multifunctional rooms for either you can rest or you can do really loud physical activities. Here is a heated wardrobe where you can dry your clothes if you have been outside and it has been raining or snowing. You can dry your clothes in here before you go into the big wardrobe. And there's an administration where the teachers can sit and they can look at the people who come in and out of the kindergarten. Here's a small sketch of the big common space. The idea of the common space is not that it should be one big regular room, but it should actually have all these small pockets where you can find a small place to sit if you are a small child, or you can actually spend time outside in the big space. So this is the idea. Instead of having one long corridor, we actually put on these pockets where you can actually interact and you can play. This is an axonometric view of it. The living rooms, the winter garden, the common space, the living room, and the wardrobe up here. And then when you do a compact building is efficient in energy use. It's also efficient because it's for the budget, because it's cheaper to actually build a compact building. But the compact building, of course, have a problem with daylight. the interaction between the spaces within the compact building are good because you can see what is going on, you can see the other departments. But for bringing daylight and view to the exterior gardens, we make these cuts. And these cuts are also what defines the small departments and breaking down the scale of the building. We also work with the heights of the building, bringing big skylights to the main part of the building. So we actually have natural daylight within the building. And the kids in the kindergarten are actually very related to the floor area because they cannot really climb up high. So we were working more with the variation of the ceiling heights to accommodate different kinds of spaces for the kids. But the landscape we have the entrance, and the idea is that the further away from the building you get, the more wild and natural it should be. So up close to the building you have the small nursery playground, and you have small vegetable gardens and herb gardens. Then you have an area for play, for swings and other slides and other play stuff. And you have a small paved area for where you can drive small bicycles. And then you have the hills where the kids can go and climb the hills and roll down and so on. This is how it looks in a master plan. And then the skylights were also a quite specific design feature of the building. And it's also something to do with sustainability. There was a big focus on how to create the natural sort of environment from sustainability, so we have natural ventilation. So the air should be quite fresh within the kindergarten. And we have sort of heat accumulation in the concrete structure to bring down the cost of heating and cooling in the building. At the same time, the big skylights bring down the use of electricity because you don't need to put on electrical lights. And then we put on solar panels on the south side of the skylights. So this is how they look. And from the outside, so towards south and west we have the solar panels on the skylights. And to the north we have the windows. Here this is the winter garden where you can access, and this is the access to the wardrobe. There's the small nursery playground, and this is before all things are sort of really grown up of the plant species. This here is an outdoor workshop where they can play with wood, and this is storage. This towards north, the skylights also have these panels, which is sort of a chameleon panel, which changes color while you are driving by the kindergarten. So actually these are the same type of panel, it's just because the angle are different, so you achieve this kind of different kinds of colors. And when inside we had a Danish street artist to colorize the skylights. And this is from the common area where we sort of post different activities on the walls, but the idea is of course that the children should actually be the ones colorizing the whole thing. This is the winter garden and the connection to the living rooms. This is a nook where the kids can sit and rest, and this is a view to the kitchen where on one side the children can stand and work, and on the other side it's actually you go down into a pit where the teachers can stand in a regular height as well and work together with the kids. This is the living room with the pizza oven and a view to the wardrobes, and here's a view into the living rooms. And this is one of the living rooms with windows in different heights, so the kids can also look outside. And putting windows up high also throws the light deep into the building. So then the next project I want to show you is actually an outcome of the first one, because the design kindergarten was published in a book in China about childhood education. And then there was a foundation in Abu Dhabi who actually saw this book, and they thought that the projects actually looked quite interesting. So this foundation for education and culture, they phoned us and asked if we wanted to come and tell about what we're doing, and they invited us to an interview competition of developing childhood education in Abu Dhabi. Yeah, Abu Dhabi is here. It's a part of the United Emirates, and our site is here at Al Reem Island. It's a new development area of Abu Dhabi. This here is Abu Dhabi, and you might know the story of how things go really rapidly down there. This is the site. And this here is a picture of Abu Dhabi in the 80s or 50s, where there was nothing. There was these palm tree houses scattered around the desert. And from the 50s to now, they are developing the country. And now they have come to a point where they actually want to develop the whole kindergarten structure as well. They have already built universities and schools, but now they also see a sort of an idea of getting the women into the working the women for working in the area as well. And then the demand for kindergarten is of course growing. And for now they haven't had any kindergartens down there, so they actually want to do a prototype of a kindergarten to show others how, or show the people of Abu Dhabi how a kindergarten is actually working. For this one we were working together with the Yale University, because in Abu Dhabi they are looking very much towards Britain and the States of also how doing things. So this is a combination of a Scandinavian and American kindergarten, so to speak. And it's not just a kindergarten, it's also a visitor center, so it's of course a little bit special. Shortly about the concept of how the building looks. This is actually the structures that they had in Abu Dhabi. They are nomads, so they had only tents. They had no built structures. The only built structures that they had up to the 50s was this, which is a palm tree house, and around it there is this fence. And on top of it they have this, what they call a wind tower, which pulls the wind into the small building and creates a small draft within the building. These are the elements that we had to work with. And this about the courtyard fence. They had the fence because they wanted to keep their goats and camels and so on inside, close to the house when they were outside in the desert. And this is also how actually they build houses today. They build a house with where they close off the sun, and they build a fence around it. So this is also our sort of where we actually started out. So the design of the building is a reinterpretation of the tent and the courtyard house. We have a house with 3 courtyards and the wind tower on top of these courtyards. And this is how it looks, and it sort of looks quite enclosed, but this is the region, and the region is very hot, and they want to close off the sun. And I'll come back to how it actually looks. This is the facade. We have done a reinterpretation of the palm leaves that filters the light into the building. So we have also these aluminum louvers filtering the light into the building. For the program, the building is actually 8,000 square meters. And in the bottom we have a big basement. Everybody in Abu Dhabi, they are driving in Kaas, so they have big basements everywhere. So this is actually their main arrival. And then there's the main stair going up and into the kindergarten part. And on top of that there's a visitor center where people can come and they can learn and they can watch how is the kindergarten actually working. And there was a big sort of design struggle in how could we actually, because they have an idea that there's a lot of visitors coming to the center, but how can we actually have kids in a space where there will become a lot of interaction and a lot of people every day passing by to see what is going on. So we wanted to do a building where the kids would actually not be disturbed every day, but where the everyday life could actually work separately from the visitor center, but where the visitor center can actually still be looking and seeing what is going on in the kindergarten. This is how the ground floor is sort of split. There's a nursery, there's the 2 to 4 year olds, and there's an area for the 3 to 6 year olds, or 5 to 6 year olds. And then there's the amenities, which is the staff and nurse station. This is not the nurse station for the kids, but if the kids get hurt, or if it needs to go to the dentist, it goes here. And then there's the big common area, and then there is 3 courtyards for outdoor playing. In the perimeter here we have the living rooms, and there's a big common area for the living rooms in this area. On top of that, there's these are mainly double height spaces, and the amenities, this one should actually be blue, because we up here have the visitor centers with the learning spaces and the auditorium, and there's a big visitor center here with the library and cafe. And the pink ones are for the staff. So the staff of the living rooms can easily go up, and they can make a note, and they can observe the kids, and they can go down again to the living room. This is the floor plan. So there are 2 living rooms connected to a bathroom, and they are connected to the common area of this part. And this part have an outdoor space here, which is a reminiscence of the outdoor fenced garden of the traditional palm leaf house, where the super tree creates a draft, and it creates the shadow for the outdoor area. Then there are these, which are creative spaces. One is for mainly water and dirt and water play, and the other one is more for drawing and arts crafts. Then there's a big double height gross motor play where they can have sports, where there's a big curtain which can be slid in front of it, so you can actually enclose it. And this is the big common area where the kids can also play, and the visitors can come and interact. At the main entrance, there's this main stair. There's a small shop where the visitors can come and buy a book of childhood education, for instance. And here, for the small kids, there is a small outdoor area, and for the bigger kids, which are going to be prepared to school, you can also see that the living rooms here are bigger. They also have a bigger outdoor area. And axonometric. So we have these semi-double height spaces where the staff and visitors can stand and look down on the classroom and see how the everyday life is going on. And from there you can also look into the outdoor play areas, and you can look down to the gross motor play, and you can look down to the indoor common areas of the parks. And in the beginning we were about this, because in the beginning we also said, oh, this is surveillance, you cannot do this. It's the kids and the staff would be disturbed, and but the Yale University department said, okay, this is actually a way also to being able to learn the staff how to interact with the kids, because learning how to raise kids is actually not done by reading books. It's more done by actually observing kids and observing how people interact with the kids. And then we actually made these, this is a big window, but we made smaller windows so you could actually stand here and observe without being too distracting. So this here is the classroom, and this here is the staff and visitor center common area, and here are the common play areas and the outdoor playground. This is the classroom where there's a door to the exterior. There's a nuke, and to this side there's the restrooms with a window into the restroom, so we can always see what is going on. This is a model of the nuke, where the kids can sleep and relax. And we also invented this big sort of curtain that can be lowered and can be sort of, you can slide it and you can make different divisions of the space with the curtain. And we're also thinking of, instead of having these big holes, we are cutting small animals here in the bottom where the people or the kids can play and look through the curtain. For the restrooms, we invented these animals. So each restroom will actually have a different experience because they will have different animals. And then on top of it, we have the office zone and the visitor center. And the visitor center is double height. And you will have this ceiling, this sort of tent structure of the ceiling will be exposed on the first floor. And here's the windows where I can look down to the kindergarten. And the kindergarten is quite open. There will be a curtain that they can slide in front of the door if they want sort of enclosure. And if the kids are sleeping inside the classroom, they can pull a curtain in front of it. So these are the windows towards the common area. And there's the wardrobe and storage in front of each classroom. And they don't have a wardrobe in Abu Dhabi because it's hot, so they never wear a jacket. And this is the staff area, where I can look down onto the common areas and the outdoor areas. Classroom again with a view to the center and the common areas and the staff area. This is the common area for the kids, where you have the gross motor play, where they can have physical activities. There's a small play hospital where they can play hospital. And then there's this round disc, which is a particular Yale invention, and they want to emphasize breastfeeding in the region. There's sort of you don't really breastfeed out in the public, of course, in Abu Dhabi. So they want to sort of push this forward, that it's actually important to breastfeed. So they have this disc where you can actually enter and you can sit inside and breastfeed. It's more for the sort of the showing that you should actually do it than it's actually for doing it. Because there are also these breastfeeding rooms in the building where you can actually sit together with your child and breastfeed, and we have this idea of that it should be sort of a space for contemplation as well, where you actually can focus on your child. We have invented these sort of play furniture which will be in the common areas. This here is a wet slide. There's a slide on top of it and a cave inside it. And there's this croco bench where the kid can sit. They can crawl into the mouth, or they can put a small tennis ball through the tail. There's a view from the shop. And this is a view from the common area of the visitor center, where there's a small library. Over here you see the main stair, and from the visitor center you can look down to the outdoor playgrounds. This is an auditorium, and this is the main stair, which is sort of we call it the snake stair. And on the snake stair there's these small white boxes, which is going to be exhibition monitors, where you can exhibit what the children are doing, or you can have a sort of a worm farm, or you can have different art objects or whatever. For the playgrounds, there are these 3 playgrounds covered with these super trees. It of course gets extremely hot in the summer, so everything needs to be covered. And we also have, for the bigger kids, an outdoor play area which is also covered with these mini trees here in the corner. And for the there's fully glazed towards the courtyards, so you actually get this daylight into the center of the building. And then we have these different kinds of areas of playing with rubber, with sand, with water, and with green herb gardens. And of course there's a sort of a mixture of, these are for the smaller kids, and the bigger kids have the bigger area and have more sort of play stuff for bigger kids. And then in each of these outdoor courtyards we have these really big super trees. And the super trees should be are actually working as a sort of a playscape in itself. So from here we have different swings, we have sound, we have mist and water coming out. And there's a slide on it as well. And then you have these big discs that create shadow. Here's some of the functions that are attached to the super trees. And they are quite tall, they are up to 25 meters tall. And the way the wind tower actually is working is that you have up here, you have a draft from the sea. And this sea draft is pulled down into the tower and circles around the courtyard and up again. And we did some tests of how does it work, and it actually seems to work. And there's a cave inside it in the bottom. You have the slide and different ropes and swings. And we are integrating the sound and lights in it as well. So at night time, the idea is that the kindergarten is also open in the night time, not for the kids, but for visitors. So there will be different events in the visitor center in the evenings where people can come and listen and learn how childhood education is working. And so there the towers are also lighting up the courtyards and the inner parts of the building. And on the outdoor we have these aluminum louvers lit by uplights as well. And this is how it looks today. They just started construction down there, and it has been a long run, but we have been drawing it for 2 years, and now they are starting to build down there. And we are very excited, of course, to see what the outcome will be in the end. So, that was the word.